I'm Patryk, and I came today to speak about remote work, especially as a web developer and generally as a developer, and specifically about some myths and reality. And I think that remote work recently, in the recent years, has gained some traction and popularity, and it comes with some attention from the media, and media like to. They paint the world in a specific way, which is not always true and accurate. So we'll come to how the myths and how it compares to the reality. So let's. At first, some people say that I'm a unicorn. That's because I'm a full-stack developer and also a designer. And some fun facts: I work remotely for over 6 years now. I recently started evangelizing remote work. I never worked in the office. That's almost true. I worked for 1 month, and it was the worst month of my life. And I sometimes stutter, and I tell you about that because of 2 reasons. First of all, I might stutter during this presentation, so don't feel awkward about that. And the second reason is that even though communication is quite important in a remote work environment, you can still, as a stutterer, survive that and succeed. Yeah. So first of the myths, especially well presented in the media, is that if you work remotely, you probably work from the beach with some nice music, some coconuts, and probably some drinks, which is quite far from truth, because in reality it's just a catchy article thumbnail, and if you think about that, like working with sun hitting your screen, without internet access or like a very poor internet access, might be quite terrible experience for work, and all the loud people and the sun hitting your computer and your face. And I would like to make some sort of there are 3 different terms, I would say. That first of all, you have vacation, where you just go for holiday and don't take your work with you. Then you have workation, which is a term that describes when you go for vacation and like you go to travel for a short period of time and work in the meantime, maybe like in the morning, and then you explore the town or the place you are in. And there is remote work, which is that you work remotely every day, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you travel all the time. Most of the people, I guess, don't travel that much or travel in some specific conditions. So another myth is that you work in pajamas, which is really strange thing, because when I often speak with people who get into remote work, they first are happy that they don't need to dress up in the morning and they can work in pajamas, which is, I think, bad because of a couple of reasons. First of all, you need some kind of a transition, like to be really productive and to separate work from life. You need to have some kind of transition, and having rituals like dressing up in the morning or making a coffee when you start to work, you give a signal to your body and to your mind that you're starting work, and that you shouldn't now keep focused on Facebook or doing some leisure stuff. Yeah, and I think it's especially important when you work remotely. It's because you don't have set boundaries like in a regular work. You probably don't work from 9 to 5. your schedule is flexible. So you might feel that the lines between work and life, they blur, and that you are constantly in work, but you're constantly unproductive because you're also distracted with your regular life. Recently, on one of the events, I've heard about term work-life blending, and some coaches now tell that you can't have this separation between work and life, because when you're at work and you're worried about some issues at home, you're still thinking about that, and after you come back home, you still think about some problems at work. And I think it's a really bad way to approach that. And I think that you should stick to keeping those two things as separate as they can be. And recently I was in Berlin and I saw this IKEA commercial, work-life and sleep balance. And I think this sleep is also a very important part because your body and your mind need to rest. And if you split like your life in 3 even parts, I think it's a good balance. So another myth, kinda, is that you need internet access. And here will be some personal story, but let's see. Okay. Yeah, so like I think a year or maybe 2 ago, I went on a cruise trip through the ocean, and I was like 2 weeks offline, but I took my work with me, and I spoke with my boss, and we said, and he agreed that I can work for 2 weeks without any internet access, and I think that's doable. And if you work remotely, that's even more possible than when you work in the office, that you don't really need an internet access. So I think that remote work thrives when people trust each other, and when people get shit done, which means that you don't need to spend 8 hours in the office, and people don't look how much time do you work, but they're looking for the outcomes of your work, and people communicate mostly asynchronously. So when you have teams spread across different time zones, like now I have a project where we have a guy in Melbourne, Australia, I'm in Poland, another one is in Buenos Aires, Argentina, the other one is in New York, United States, and the client is in California. So when you're spread across like I think 12 or 15 hours of difference, of time zone difference, there's no, like, you don't communicate daily in a real-time basis. And remote work thrives also when people know what to do and how to do that. And it also combines with the previous point that because if you wouldn't know what to do next, and you would ask your colleague that's like 10 hours apart from you, then you would get response on the next day. So you would be super unproductive. Also, I think internet tends to be quite destructive because you like spend time on social media, reading some articles and so on. So I would even say that disconnecting from the internet when you work is good for your productivity. And there are lots of tools for developers, like I think it's called Dash, when you can download your download API documentations and access them offline on your computer. And I believe that ideally, when you work remotely, you should be able to work for a week without access to the internet, and nobody should nobody should have problems with that. So another kind of myth is that you need to be a great communicator, which, well, you need to communicate well, but it's not about being the, I don't know, the loudest or the most eloquent person in the room. I think remote communication is, like, first of all, is asynchronous, so you need to understand that, and you need to structure your questions and responses to questions of other people in a way that there is no doubt left and people don't need to wait another day to get another response from you. Another thing is that it should be transparent and honest. And by that I mean that, for example, if you won't be able to reach the deadline, you should communicate that straight out and not like wait to the last minute and then say, oops, I wasn't able to do that. And I learned that lesson on my own because when I was starting 6 years ago as a freelance developer, I worked with clients and it turned out to be like I wasn't able to reach the deadline, and then I wouldn't pick up the phone from them for a week because I was so scared that they will scream on me or like be very angry. And I learned during those years that if you tell people in advance that you won't be able to do something on time, they will respect that, and then you can set some new expectations and put everything at ease. Another thing is that it's kind of emotionless, because when you mostly speak with people on Slack or some text communicator or maybe emails, and on those text communicators you can't tell the emotions of the people. You don't see their face, so you don't know how they truly feel about what you said or what you wrote. So it's really important to be empathical about other people, and using some emojis is great for that, because like you can show when you're joking or when you're angry or when you're smiling, and it doesn't feel so fake to other people. And so that kind of connects to the transparency and honesty, that communication is mostly about setting and meeting the expectations. So like creating and reading briefs, setting deadlines, and reporting the progress of the work. And I think one of the most common traps is falling into curve of knowledge. So because you think it is about that when you know something, you assume that other people also know that. So you tend to use maybe some professional, non-understandable words that other people don't know yet, or maybe you skip some details, and those people and you think those people know those details, but in fact they don't. So I would say kinda that often people who speak English very well, they fall into this trap because they think that they want to use like a very high-class English, and I think it's really important to use a very simple word that everybody will understand. Another myth is that remote teams don't meet because, well, they are distributed, so why should we care to meet? But I think it's important to meet, and in reality I think most of the remote teams meet, usually like twice or 4 times a year. But those meetings shouldn't be like really shouldn't be spent on working strictly, but more on team building and building connections between people, because in the end you work together, so making some kind of friendships with your colleagues I think is important for your well-being, and for maybe some communication heavy work. So back to what I said about those like people spread about multiple time zones and these asynchronous conversations. So when you meet together and there are like some things that you need to discuss and have everybody on board and maybe re-evaluate some things like on a daily basis, it's a really good time to do that. So on contrary, they shouldn't be wasted on some unproductive meetings that corporations like, and on the regular work. Another thing is that remote teams don't have office, which is not true. Like, it's a good idea to have some kind of an office as a remote worker. Coming back to these, having some set of rituals to transition between work and life. So having a space when your body and mind feels that you are at work is really good. So it can be a co-working space, which got quite popular in the recent years, and those places are especially good that you can meet some other people and you won't feel so lonely like at other places. Maybe some favorite coffee shop or multiple coffee shops, or maybe a dedicated room or space in your apartment. When you walk into there, you know that you're gonna work. And of course, remote work gives you a lot of flexibility, so you can use that and work every day in a different place or in a different style. Another thing is that remote teams are hyper productive, which is not really true, I think. In the end, we are just people and we have more and less productive days as everyone. But thanks to that we work remotely, we have a very flexible time and schedule. So if you feel unproductive, you shouldn't stress out about that, and maybe just go for a walk or spend some time with friends or family or run some errands and work later when you feel more productive. Because in the end, remote work isn't about being in the office for 8 hours. It's about getting things done. And I will leave you with a thought to consume, that corporations are indeed remote teams in denial. Because if you think about that, you have global companies that have teams around the world, but they just don't trust those teams to let them work from home. Thank you.
I have a question about health aspect of your remote work career.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you didn't mention any like sports or any health insurance. Did you have some of those?
Yeah, I mean, as I was presented, I like to do kitesurfing and skittering, and I think it's good to like have it helps you to make those transitions between work and life. Mm-hmm. And also, since we are working with our minds mostly, then I think having some physical activity is really good for recharging those mind batteries.
Mm-hmm. And a formal part, like when you were abroad, for instance, mm-hmm. Did you have any kind of like insurance, or it was paid by your company or by your own?
By my own, because I have my own działalność gospodarcza. So like yeah, I need to pay and cover most of my things. But there are some companies that offer like some insurance and benefits, but I'm more like a freelancer now,
Okay.
so I don't have those perks.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, so a little addition. You talked about sun. I highly recommend some screen protection to reduce sun. It actually helps you a lot because MacBooks have glasses and you don't see anything, and when you have a screen protection that reduces sun reflection, it's helped a lot.
Okay.
I have two questions. First one is, how did you survive 2 weeks without Stack Overflow?
Experience.
Okay. And the second one, did you have any tax residence issues or problems when you are working abroad for so much long time?
No, I mean I'm a tax resident of Poland, and I don't like try to avoid that in any way. Yeah, and like this is like I think on the legal terms it's kind of undefined now, because there are a lot of people traveling and working remotely, but since that's a work that you do for your own company in a different country, like I wouldn't say that it gets under the immigration laws, but like there are no laws, as far as I know, there are no countries that have laws targeting those scenarios that you as a Polish resident go to Brazil and work there for 3 months running like a project for US company.
How did you get started with doing remote work? So if you've never been in an office, what was like the first thing with it?
Yeah, I started as a student, so I was getting some freelance jobs. Mostly I was going to some events or conferences and meeting other people and telling them that I do design and web development, and they would say, "Oh, I have a project," and that's how I started.
So, can you give us from your personal experience, examples of where have you been during the 6 years, or why do you recommend this way of work? Because I guess you do not sit in your room for 6 years, right?
No. I traveled with work. I traveled to Brazil for over a month to kitesurf and work, and I've been to Canary Islands, to Fuerteventura, and the biggest island of those, Gran Canaria, yes, exactly. Yeah, but why I think that remote work is good, because you have a lot of flexibility. You don't have like a boss or like those corporation standards that you basically need to waste 8 hours a day spending time in my opinion, unproductive place. And also you don't like waste time traveling to and from work, or you can work also for global companies and earn like people in United States living in Poland, which is a big profit.
So what is usually your place to work? Is it a separate room in your apartment or a coffee?
I would say combination of all of those. Like if I have a day that I feel that I want to spend with other people, I go to a co-working place. Maybe if I have some errands to run during the day, then in the middle I go to coffee shop to work there, and I feel that these days terrible. Yeah.
Could you describe your regular workstation? I mean, chair, desk, what kind of equipment do you use, and do you see any evolution of this stuff, or you just use the same stuff, the same equipment, the same furniture in those years?
So, well, before I had a Windows, a notebook with Windows. Yeah, but recently, like I think 3 years ago, I switched to MacBook. I don't want to have any discussion about that, maybe. So usually, like if I work from a coffee shop or from my home, I work only on my MacBook Pro. If I go to a co-working space, I have my own desk there, and I have a big screen that I connect to. And I have some external keyboard and a stand for the MacBook. Because I see in my case that not comfortable chair, I mean safe chair for your backbone. It's a big problem. After 2 days it's okay, but after 1 week or 2 it's getting more serious. You have a pain in the back. So probably it was the reason why you asked. And monitor is also, display is very important. And I see that in my setup, I mean my workstation at home, it's a lack of good decision in terms of planning this place. I think it's for remote workers it's very important, and I think that it's designing your space is like an evolution. Yeah, I mean I totally agree with what you said, that having a good chair and a big screen is important. Though I have quite a small apartment and I don't have like space to organize a separate room for that. So I use like a regular table chair, but it helps me going out to the co-working space, because then I feel that my back can rest and I have a bigger screen and can be more productive.
You don't have an external monitor in your flat?
No, only in a co-working space. But it's a thing that I think you get to use to it. Like I learned that when I work only on my MacBook, then I have only one window with code open. So I would say that you need to that you're more focused on one thing then.
How many people do you work with?
Currently a team of 5 people.
So you're saying all the communication is asynchronous?
Yeah. I mean, we have once a week we have a call with the clients just to discuss the progress and things. But apart from that, all
So it's like a studio, like a software house.
It's like a freelance project. But yeah, it's like a software house, right?
Okay. It was just hard to believe that you do everything asynchronously. So you said you want to evangelize remote work. I think you did a good job on that. But what you said is strictly for developers, isn't it? I mean, like the other jobs, like managers, leaders, whatever, wouldn't get away without synchronous communication on a daily basis.
I think it depends. Like I believe that that a company needs to be remote first to like really thrive in this remote with the remote work. And if you are remote first, you set up like all the processes to be transparent and all the communication to be asynchronous and like open to everyone, so everyone is up to date with all the information, and there are like no conversations that are going between only 2 people. There's always all the team involved or like a big part of the team.
One more question though. Do you feel like sometimes it's worth staying late just to get something done with the person on the other end than just wait for the email next day?
Uh,
that often?
It depends on the stage of the project, because where there are some things to define, and when you need to like maybe fix some bugs that are between the front end and the back end, then it's worth to like have a call together and work on these at the same time, and like speak about the bugs and issues, because otherwise it can end up in a like back and forth for like long hours or even a couple of days. But I would say most of the time it's not important. Like most of the time you know what you need to do and you just do it.
Okay. I'm working with more people, so I can see a different dynamic in the team. So it wouldn't work for me. But yeah, I get it. Next.
Got a question. Since you mentioned that you're a freelance developer for a very long time, do you have long-term contracts or either short ones? And maybe did you experience some long pauses between those contracts?
It's a mixture of all of those. There was a period of time when I worked for a year and a half for one company, and I wanted to work for one company on one big project for a long time. But nowadays I prefer working on like, I don't know, smaller, medium-sized projects which last for like 3 to 6 months. And I usually take some short breaks between those projects. And thanks to that I work for for companies from the United States for higher rates, I'm able to take longer pauses. But yeah, as a freelancer, you either are overbooked all the time, or you have like those periods when you don't have projects.
So from personal experience, you don't complain about lack of job?
No, I enjoy that and take time to take some breath and rest.
Okay.
Excuse me, that may seem like a kind of personal question, but I have to ask that. Do you have your own kids?
Not yet.
Okay. So if you ever have one, then I would appreciate any
follow-up.
Okay, sure. That's a good one.
How can you describe the process of work? I mean, it looks like a Scrum or it's Kanban. How does it look like?
Like I never seen a true Scrum, to be honest, in like any kind of a team. And mostly in my projects there is some form of Scrum where we have, for example, stand-ups are in a form of the asynchronous messages sent after the end of the day, that you say what you worked on, what are you planning to work tomorrow, and if you have any problems or blockers, and like do some releases in every 2 weeks, for example. But it depends on the project. Like every team and every client has a different process.
I have a kind of similar question. How do you organize your work? Like you work with a team of 5 people. How do you decide which task is assigned to what person?
Mm-hmm. So since I work on small teams, like we have one person for each area. So for example, we have one UI designer, one backend developer, one front-end developer. So we kind of know what to work on, and like every week or every 2 weeks we decide what to work on which feature to work next. And for me personally, I have a very simple thing to organize my work. I use to-do notes, like to-do stickers. And I write up to 3 things at the end of the day, which I want to work on the next day.
Do you use some tools like Trello?
Yeah, again, it depends on the project and on the client, and I use I think Trello, Asana, Jira, whatever works for the client or the project or the team.
And when it comes to repository, where do you save all your stuff? Like to GitHub, or your client provides you some?
The client sets up his own repository either on GitHub or SourceTree or Bitbucket. I'm sorry.
How often do you switch teams? Like you have one team for one project and then your team completely changes?
Yeah.
And how long one team lasts?
This year, I'm now ending the project that lasted for I think 5 or 6 months. Before I had a very short contract for a month maybe, and before I had a long project for a year and a half.
You work mostly for US companies or other countries, and did you have any problem with international pilots from that client?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I worked for US and Swiss companies, and also some Polish companies too. No, I didn't have any problems with payments. Usually, those companies, when they hire you and pay you a lot of money, they know that you're providing the value, and they will have trouble if they won't pay you and you stop working in the middle of the project. That's my experience, at least.
Are they paying you, for example, if you work for a US company, do they pay you in dollars?
Yeah, I'm always getting paid in the currency of the country I work for. So when I worked for Swiss companies, I got paid in Swiss francs.
Does it require for you to make some changes in your banking or something, like banking habits? For example, you need to create separate account just for receiving monthly payment from them?
Yeah, I mean, I use mBank, and I have a business account there, and it's you can open a new account with I guess two clicks, and they offer accounts with different currencies. I think maybe we'll move to the.
I don't want to stop you, but I think that we should take a break. And if you have any more questions, please ask Patryk later on, and we will continue.